Hello, everybody. Welcome to the October on Deck. I can't believe it's October already because I haven't seen you or Christine in ages.
I know, it's been crazy this year, hasn't it?
It really
We
has.
just haven't been able to connect.
You're traveling. I'm
yeah.
a little bit traveling. You're traveling in a much more interesting way.
Well,
I've been to Florida, and you've been to Africa and...
south of France.
Can you tell a little bit about Africa?
And Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Africa was amazing. We did all of November last year in Africa. It's our second time. If you ever get a chance, you've got to go. Oh,
I've
okay.
Been. It's my
Great.
favorite place trip ever. There will never be one to replace
I love that country.
It
I love
is
the
amazing.
people. I love everything about it. Yeah. We had a great time.
Okay, highlight.
The highlight would probably be this little community in the mountains called Franschhoek. I hope I said that correctly.
It was in wine country.
Wine country, exactly.
It was really nice there.
It was very nice there, and we did a horseback ride from winery to winery.
Oh.
Yeah, which was good for those of us who knew how to horseback ride.
The visual of going from winery to winery.
I will say that there was a young woman who drank a little too much and slid off that horse. But it was fun for the rest of us to watch.
Great.
Yeah.
And how many safaris did you do?
Just the one, and we did that at Zulu Nyala. We won the bid at the Katuitt Center. You know how they offer it for? Yeah, so we did that. It was great.
That is fantastic.
Really fun. So we felt like we were supporting a local art center at the same time going international. So it was great fun.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the south of France and Barcelona.
Yeah. So same trip. So we went. We do every year. We do a bicycle trip. So this was our bike and barge trip, and we bicycled Barcelona the first week, and then the second week we did this wonderful little boat tour down the south of France, and it was spring, so the heather wasn't out yet, but you know we did the heather farms and that kind of thing.
Do you belong to a group, and the group goes from interesting place to interesting place?
Well, absolutely.
It's called. Give a little plug for that?
Sure, the Upper Cape Bike and Ski Club. This was our 7th or 8th trip, and they take a trip every year to an international place, and usually there's 30 or 40 people. It has grown so much now they have 2 trips.
Oh, wonderful.
So as a matter of fact, it's grown so much, and it's so widely attended that my husband and I missed it for next year.
Oh.
Darn, we'll have to go somewhere else.
Oh dear, where are they going next year?
They're doing Croatia.
Oh, everybody's going to Croatia.
Which was one of my favorites. I did it already.
You did, and you loved it?
So they're doing a different part of Croatia. Yeah, loved it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's, I've been busy with that. I just got back from Minnesota, though.
Oh, why'd you go there?
Visiting family. You know what's happened, I think it happens to everyone. We get older, so does our family, and suddenly it dawned on us that we needed to start visiting them before we had to go home for funerals. So it was like all of a sudden one of the oldest brothers is, in his mid-70s, and we were thinking, we ought to touch base, do some FaceTime, some actual
real FaceTime. I have actually been thinking about that a lot because, as I told you earlier, I think I'm 35, but I'm not.
Damn it.
And all of a sudden, I realized that you really need to do the bucket list kinds of things.
Got to reach out and touch those folks.
Well, I have a guy who has had and still has a very interesting bucket list.
I love this.
We're going to take a little break and come back and meet Deane Turner.
Oh, yippee.
I'm very excited, Deane, to have you on the show today. Annie, you don't know anything about Deane's adventures. You will hear. But Deane is the author of this book, Adrift in Memories, which he very nicely put in my mailbox a couple of weeks ago so I could have reading material on my way to Florida.
Great.
I have to tell you, I wasn't so crazy just about reading it. I don't know why. I couldn't put it down. You have had a fascinating life. Tell the audience and Annie some of your background because it's pretty cool.
Well, it's funny. I had talked about and thought about writing a book, but never really. I did a lot of writing in corporate when I was with different companies during my career. but just carried a vision of one day maybe writing a book. And so my dear wife, about 10 years ago, said after a party where I told a few stories, said, you know, you really ought to write these stories down for our children and our grandchildren. They have no idea what you've done. So between that and a couple of months later, I was up with my 96-year-old mother, and I said, Ma, what's the secret to longevity? And she said, stay active. And so I took those two bits of advice seriously, and I started writing. And so about 3 months later, I had an article called Adrift in Memories in the Cape Cod View magazine. I got a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah.
So I was thrilled, so I started writing, and about halfway through, and I didn't realize it would take me 10 years, about halfway through, I said, boy, if I'm going to take time to write a book like this and do a good job, then I need it really to be for a bigger audience. And what can I do to do that? And so I actually remembered that most of the books that I had enjoyed in the past were those where there was always a takeaway. There was something I could ponder and benefit from going forward. And so I decided to write lessons learned at the end of each of the 54 chapters. And actually, I used that as a litmus test to decide which ones to keep. And so I went from 100 stories down to 54. And so voila, it happened.
Okay,
That's
we
awesome.
have to see why you had, did you write about? You were working for Union Carbide for a long time.
Right, 20 years, yeah.
Then you were sailing for a long time.
Kind of a parallel career.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's quite a sailor. I mean, not
That's
little
great.
tiny sailboats, but big, huge.
Well, I started tiny. I started out on an 8-foot Monadnock Moth in Gardner, Mass. as a kid, as a Boy Scout, and then went on to the Friendship Sloops, which were a beautiful classic boat up in Maine, and then got to work on a windjammer out of Camden, Maine.
How beautiful.
And then finally, the best summer job ever is the front of the book, and that's working aboard the Lord Jim, which was an incredible topsail schooner out of Marblehead at the Boston Yacht Club.
I read that part, yeah.
One of the things that was exciting about that summer was it's the first time I saw Cape Cod. And so we were down sitting at the Hyannis Yacht Club, the crew eating lobster, and Patty Page was singing Old Cape Cod on the
Poor
music
guy.
on the PA
Yeah.
system. And I said, I think I've died and gone to heaven. Really? I will be back. And so my wife and I moved here in 2000.
I have to interrupt you for a minute. He's lived in 30 places, am I
30
right?
places. That's correct.
Okay.
And I haven't been running from anything. I've been running towards things.
I like that. You're running
That's
towards
great.
things.
That's right.
Because it is remarkable how many times your family moved, how many times you moved.
Oh, I know. Well, it was a great journey. It, you know, some of the moves were, most of the moves were very positive. Some of them were a little sad because of endings, and they always went on to new beginnings, which was great. But no, when we moved here, it was my 29th move. And see, I grew up in an era where with the Army, you don't tell them where you're going to go. You go where they tell you you're going. And I lived in an era where if you wanted to, you know, ascend an organization chart, then you went where the need was. And so it just kept going back and forth from the east to the west coast. But it was a fun journey.
It sounds fabulous.
Fun journey.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Tell us more about the boating part of it.
Lord, I've got several of the stories are both good news, bad news. There's a very positive element to some of them, but there's also a negative within the same story. One of them is what I've positioned as my perfect storm. Have you ever seen the movie Perfect Storm?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember those 100-foot waves?
Woohoo!
I remember
Oh,
getting
you
nauseous
remember
just
what
watching the movie. Yeah.
So I got asked by my brother's buddy, Johnny Philbrook, who was the senior captain for American Airlines, to help him sail his 43-foot Easily from Bermuda to Boston. And that was in 1976 amongst the tall ships.
Wow.
And so it was a wonderful sail until we were totally becalmed in the Sargasso Sea, north of Bermuda. And so I, in my evening prayer before dinner, said, Lord, bring us some wind. And by God did he answer.
It worked.
10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds. and 35-foot seas. And when you're in an ocean liner, a 35-foot sea, you don't even notice it. But in a 43-foot sailboat, you're looking at seas around. And so I thought I knew how to pray before that trip. But oh my Lord, we didn't think we were coming back. So it was a great sailing experience, but it was almost.
But you lived to talk about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise it wouldn't be so good. 35, I mean, were you sick?
We were.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all were. Yeah, we were all praying.
I read it in the book.
And the ironic thing was we survived that incredible storm. And then one of the ladies, it was a 6-person, 3 couples, one of the ladies said, you know, I grew up and we had a cottage, the family had a place in Truro. Rather than go up through the canal to Marblehead, can we go outside around the Cape? And so Phil Brook checked out the charts and he found a channel about a mile off the coast between Chatham and Provincetown where there was 20-foot water. And so we said, sure, we'll go around. So we're toasting with the bubbly that we had made it through the big storm, and lo and behold, fog set in. You couldn't see the bubbly, and it was a matter of moments before we ran aground, right off of the beach that she wanted to show us.
Oh no!
Well, that
was it a new
convenient.
sandbar or something that
was
was
a- it was
undetectable? Because that
Exactly.
happens all the time.
In fact, it only sits about where we were, was about a half a mile from the pirate ship Widow.
Oh, see?
And so it was amazing. But so we, put out storm anchors and waited for the Coast Guard, and they couldn't find us. The helicopters overhead and
Because of the
and
fog.
You're
whatever.
socked in.
So then finally they came and they took us. They said it's going to take 8 hours to haul you around to the Provincetown harbor. So we got there, and I was rowing the small boat in from Isolde. And all of a sudden, the band struck up, and we figured, oh my God, they've discovered that we have made it through that storm, and they're celebrating our arrival. Well, it wasn't us at all. It was the blessing of the Portuguese fishing fleet going out.
So funny. So funny.
I would have just said it was for me.
It was for him. It was. I had a question.
Yeah.
Did your wife accompany you on all of these trips? Because you were away from home a lot,
Right.
right?
Yeah. No, my first wife didn't, because we had our young children, and so a lot of my international work in Asia and India and South America, I was just there on business.
Right.
But my second wife, and Gudrun and I have been married for 35 years, we've done a lot of
Nice.
traveling together,
Yeah.
all over Europe and Australia.
That's
and
nice.
had some great trips.
That's
On sailing
terrific.
trips, at that time, I had invited my girlfriend from California to be my partner on that sailing trip. So, but whenever my wife gets a chance to join,
She
she'll be there.
does,
Yeah,
huh?
she
Now,
loves-
do not forget that you have said that we could all go on the boat in Falmouth. What is
Yes.
it called? Liberté?
Liberté, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be wonderful to do a sequel interview
Yeah.
aboard
Would be
the
great.
74-foot schooner Liberté in Falmouth.
We would love to do that. Right?
Yeah, I
No
know.
35-foot waves, though.
No 35-foot wave.
Wait.
A sunset
Okay.
cruise.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Sunset.
Oh, yeah.
I'll bring the wine.
Oh, they have a sunset cruise.
They do have a sunset
They
cruise,
do.
and
And
the-
I know the captain very well, so Chris is thrilled with anybody within our crew that wants to take the wheel and feel what it's like to drive a 74-foot schooner. Great experience.
He's a great
Love
guy.
to do it.
In closing, I do want to tell you that when I was younger, my dad owned a boat on the Long Island Sound, and there was a big storm, and they came running up and saying, Mr. Moore, your boat is sinking. And he said, good. He told me boat meant bring out another 1,000.
Another 1,000. Oh, yeah.
Right?
now it's 10,000.
I'm sure.
Well,
I'm
it's
sure.
one of the happiest and saddest days is when you buy and sell a boat.
Yeah.
But you're right. Many people call it a hole in the water into which you pour money.
Right, exactly,
He
exactly.
knew.
He was right. Thank you
Oh, you're
much
welcome.
for being on the show. And if
Thank you.
stay for a couple minutes afterwards, I have a ton of questions I want to ask you.
Terrific.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
it's October, and our next show is going to be very, very interesting. Haunting, you might say. So
Yay.
stick with us. Have a great fall.